Welcome back, class 10, your history class. Today we will start with chapter 13, the Second World War. The Second World War started in the year 1939 and it ended in the year 1945. So, the Second World War. The First World War ended in November 1918. People all over the world heaved a sigh of relief. They were much relieved. But 20 years later, nations were stunned when the world was plunged into a terrible war that resulted in the loss of millions of human lives and billions of dollars. So, just after the First World War ended in the year 1918, after 20 years, another war started, and people were terrified. They were stunned. After the close of the First World War, the League of Nations was formed, and the leading nations of the world had agreed that all international disputes would be settled by peaceful means. So there was an agreement among all the great nations that any international disputes or disparities or differences will be settled in a peaceful and amicable way. They pledged that they would work together for the preservation of world peace. They promised that they will work together to preserve world peace. But in the years that followed, many such events happened as led to the outbreak of the Second World War. But in the following years, lot of things happened which led to the outbreak of the Second World War. Causes of the war. The war was due to the following causes. What are the causes? First, decline of democracy and revival of aggressive nationalism. Again, aggressive nationalism revived. As a result of the First World War, there was an economic crisis in the various nations of the world. Large-scale food shortage, inflation and unemployment were the major issues that were faced by the nations. So there was large-scale food shortage was there, inflation was there, unemployment was there. The democratic governments in Europe were not able to face the challenges and problems effectively. So the democratic governments of Europe were not able to face the challenges and problems effectively. They were not able to face it properly. Because of widespread corruption and nepotism in administration, people had to suffer hardships and they lost faith in the democratically elected governments. So, widespread corruption was there, nepotism was there, and people had to suffer hardships. That is why they lost all the faith in the government which were elected democratically. The dictators taking advantage of the situation, the dictators started taking advantage of the situation, offered a program of aggressive nationalism to build up support for their respective parties. So that is clear. Now comes the Treaty of Versailles. The peace settlement at Paris was made in a spirit of revenge. Very, very important line. Although it was supposed to be a peace settlement, but the underlying poison was revenge. It was a revengeful settlement. The Germans felt that too much injustice had been done to them. The Germans obviously felt too much injustice was done to them. The victorious powers had deprived Germany of huge tracts of its territory and its colonies in the regions of East Africa and Southwest Africa. The Germans were deprived of their colonies. Her military strength, that means the Germany's military strength, was completely crushed. The German army was restricted to a force of 1 lakh soldiers and the navy was limited to 15,000 men. This is ridiculous. The air force was totally banned. Germany was burdened with an immense war indemnity. War indemnity, you have to pay a heavy tax or payment. She had to pay a heavy sum estimated at $33 billion to the Allies. So $33 billion she had to pay. Germany had to give up to the Allies her merchant ships as compensation. She had to supply huge quantities of coal to France, Italy, and Belgium for 10 years. We all know that. In the last chapter was dictatorship. Previous to that, we have learned all those things. It was impossible for a proud German race to forget the consequences of the war, which they had lost so humiliatingly. This fueled the rise of Nazism in Germany. Once in legal power, Hitler entered upon the career of aggression. Italians were also highly dissatisfied with the peace settlement. Britain and France failed to satisfy Italy's colonial ambitions. Although Italy had gained a few territories in Europe at the cost of Austria, this could not satisfy her ambitions. So, Italy was also dissatisfied. Britain and France failed to satisfy Italy's colonial ambitions. Although Italy gained a few territories in Europe at the cost of Austria, but it was not able to fully satisfy her ambition. Fascist movement in Italy, it is also another cost. Cause. Italy had to spend a lot of money during the war on her army and war equipment. She was groaning under heavy debt. Italian government was forced with the serious problems. The Italian government was faced with the serious problems of poverty, hunger, disease, and unemployment. Obviously, when a nation collapses, such things come out as poverty, hunger, disease, unemployment, riots and strike obviously will break out. In this situation, the general lawlessness, the fascists seized power in Italy. So, if a country is weak, if the country is lawless, if the country is suffering from some sort of riot, unemployment, inflation, a powerful party over here, the fascist, they seize the opportunity and seize the power. They had an imperialistic outlook. Italy turned towards Germany and Japan and concluded a treaty of friendship leading to the Berlin Rome Tokyo axis in opposition to the Franco British alliance. In 1940, Italy entered the Second World War. Now, this was a cause. Another cause was Nazi regime acts of aggression. This was a very important cause. Hitler preached the gospel of victorious sword, victory sword. He broke the bonds of the Treaty of Versailles and began to build up Germany's armed forces. In March 1936, Hitler made his first move to occupy Rhineland that had been demilitarized by the Treaty of Versailles. So in 1936, Hitler started occupying Rhineland, which has been demilitarized. No military was there by the Treaty of Versailles. So he didn't bother about the Treaty of Versailles. He then captured Vienna, the capital of Austria. Soon he turned his attention to the conquest of Sudetenland, which was predominantly inhabited by Germans. The president of Czechoslovakia decided not to yield to Hitler's pressure. The president of Czechoslovakia decided that he will not give in to Hitler's pressure. The war seemed inevitable. Obviously, there will be a war. The hands of four nations, Germany, Italy, Britain, and France, met at Munich on 29 September 1938 and decided to hand over Sudetenland to Germany. The Czechoslovakian government was persuaded to accept the Munich Pact in the interest of peace. Hitler's troops occupied Sudetenland on 5th October 1938. In March 1939, Germany invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia without any justification. So you can see how the Nazi army and how Hitler, after occupying certain portions of Sudetenland, invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia without any rhyme or reason. So he was an aggressive leader, and his acts of aggression and occupying different countries led to dissatisfaction and obviously led to war. Now, a very important point is the policy of appeasement. What is appeasing? Appeasing means not disturbing your enemy or not disturbing anybody, knowing that that party is doing wrong. Why? If you disturb the party and tell him that you are doing wrong, it will anger that party and that party will attack you. So the policy of appeasement means acceding to, accepting hostile demands in order to gain peace. You are accepting the hostile and wrong demands of different countries, thinking that there will be peace and they will not attack you. There were two main reasons why Britain and France followed the policy of appeasement towards Germany. First, they believed that the Treaty of Versailles had been too severe to the defeated parts, especially Germany. They believed that. Okay. In their own mind, they believed it. Secondly, they thought that if genuine grievances of Germany were removed, if genuine sadness or grievances of Germany were removed, she would be satisfied and would do nothing to disturb the peace of the world. Therefore, they had agreed to transfer Sudetenland to Germany at the Munich Conference held in 1938. So they agreed to that. They also did nothing when Hitler began to rearm Germany in complete violation of the terms mentioned in the Treaty of Versailles. So when uh, Hitler started to, you know, rearm the German forces, because in the Treaty of Versailles it was reduced. So Hitler didn't bother. I believe he tore the Treaty of Versailles and threw it in the waste paper basket. So when he started to rearm Germany, no one said anything. The Great Britain and France were mistaken in their assessment. Why? Because Hitler's demand grew shockingly excessive. Hitler's demand started growing. He was really aiming at European mastery. He started to gain all over Europe. The policy of appeasement greatly emboldened Germany, Italy, and Japan. So, if you keep quiet, in spite of knowing that the other party is doing wrong, the other party will get bold. They will think that, see, nothing is there, doing nothing, so let us do whatever we feel like. So, they emboldened the emboldened Germany, Italy, and Japan. Germany's ambition was to conquer Europe. Italy aspired to establish a supremacy in Africa, Balkans region. And Japan's ambition was to become the master of Southeast Asia and Pacific Island. So that was their plan. Imperialist ambitions of these three countries plunged the war into another destructive war. So their ambitions plunged the whole world into another war. Another important reason was failure of the League of Nations. One of the main causes of the Second World War was the failure of the League of Nations. When weaker nations appealed to the League to take actions against the aggressors, the only weapon was available to the League of Nations was economic sanctions. But it proved ineffective against the determined aggressors. Had the League of Nations taken collective actions against Italy's aggression in Ethiopia or Japan's invasion in Manchuria, the world would have been spared the horrors of another war. So, the League of Nations was weak in front of these uh, powerful countries and their unlawful demands. Had the League of Nations taken collective action against Italy, Japan, or Germany, it would have been spared. The world would have been spared from another horrible war. The League failed in taking action against aggressions which encouraged Germany to occupy Austria and attack Poland, which ultimately led to the Second World War. Now, Japan's invasion of China. An important act of aggression after the First World War was the invasion of China by Japan in 1931. China appealed to the League of Nations to declare sanctions against Japan. Britain and France, the leading members of the League, did not give any attention to the appeal. Thus, Japan occupied Manchuria and set up a government there. In 1933, Japan left the League of Nations and started occupying the British and American properties in China. Obviously, if the League of Nations did not pay any heed or attention to China, why China will stay in that? Sorry, they didn't listen to Japan. Why they will? I was correct previously. If the League of Nations didn't pay any heed to China, China and Japan confusion into China, so why would China sit quiet? Because China appealed to the League of Nations. See, Japan is attacking us, so the League of Nations did not listen. So, in what happened, Japan also became emboldened, and Japan left the League of Nations and started occupying the British and American properties in China. So, what happened? Britain and France followed the policy of appeasement, thinking the Japanese could be weakened, could be used to weaken China. See, France and Britain kept quiet because they thought, since Japan was taking and capturing uh, all the American and British properties in China, in spite of knowing that these two countries, America and Britain, kept quiet because they thought they can use Japan to weaken China. How ridiculous is this? Absolutely ridiculous. Then ideological differences. Countries such as USA, Britain, and France are known to be solid stronghold of liberal democracy. There have been periods of elections in these countries. On the other hand, the political system of Italy and Germany was dominated by one political party. So there was political differences between these two, bunch of countries. There were no elections allowed in Germany during Hitler's rule. Mussolini himself admitted quite openly that the struggle between the two worlds can permit no compromise, either we or they. Moreover, Axis states had expansionist aims, therefore, the war between the two camps was inevitable. If you have political differences, there will be war. I mean, there used to be war. Now there are a lot of political differences everywhere, so there is hopefully, and God willingly, there is no war. So, lot of causes we have learned today, but we are deliberately leaving out the most important cause, the immediate cause. In the next class, we will start off with the immediate cause, which is the Germans' invasion of Poland and demand of Danzig corridor, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the chapter. So that is all for today. Thank you very much.